They called my colorful ranch fence gaudy, then sledgehammered it to pieces while I slept. 3 a.m. Splintering wood tears me from sleep. I bolt outside to find them red-handed 3 HOA board members destroying 6 months of my life with sledgehammers. My grandfather's turquoise and orange colors, obliterated. Hand-carved horses scattered like broken bones. Vintage ranch signs reduced to kindling. The HOA president smirks in her headlamp beam. Your fence violates neighborhood aesthetics. But she made one fatal mistake. I'm a third-generation rancher with a pregnant wife, a failing ranch, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Here's what happened when I decided to fight back. What would you do if vandals destroyed your family heritage at 3 a.m.? Drop your craziest HOA nightmare below and tell me where you're watching from, because my revenge made national headlines and changed HOA law forever. Meet Wade Thornton, that's me. 52, third-generation cattle rancher with calloused hands and a stubborn streak wide as Texas. I inherited 40 acres from Grandpa Joe, the kind of man who settled disputes with apple pie and measured character by how you treated your livestock. This land used to be pure ranch country. Now it's Meadowbrook Estates, where city folks come to play cowboy on weekends. That fence they sledgehammered? 6 months of my soul. Every Saturday morning I'd shuffle out there with coffee steam rising from my mug, the scent of hay and diesel fuel filling my lungs. Turquoise and orange grandpa's racing colors from when he ran quarter horses and won more ribbons than our barn could hold. Each post, hand-carved with horse motifs, vintage ranch signs restored with steel wool until my knuckles bled. The rough texture of weathered wood under my palms felt like shaking hands with history. Sarah called it our rainbow fence. She'd waddle out with sweet tea, her hand resting on our growing miracle. First baby at 38, we'd given up hope until that pink line appeared. It's perfect, honey. Grandpa Joe would be proud. Neighbors loved it initially. Maria Martinez brought her kids to count the painted horses. Old Pete Wilson's grandson learned his colors pointing at those orange posts. Even the newcomers smiled and waved. Then Hurricane Vivian blew in. Picture a Dallas real estate shark in designer armor, treating our ranch roads like her personal runway. Vivian Blackwood arrived 2 years ago with a white Mercedes and a superiority complex bigger than her monthly car payment. Within 6 months, she'd crown herself HOA queen. Nobody else wanted the thankless job, so we figured how much damage could one uptight lawyer do. Famous last words. The violation notice arrived like a death certificate, hand-delivered by Vivian herself, dressed for court in 90-degree heat. The paper reeked of expensive perfume and entitlement. Mr. Thornton. Not even a hello. Your fence violates Section 4.7 regarding earth tone aesthetics. 30 days to repaint beige or brown. I actually chuckled. Ma'am, this ranch predates your subdivision by 4 decades. She whipped out a folder thick as the Dallas phone book. 1987 Meadowbrook Estates Community Standards clearly state, Lady, I was painting this fence before you knew Texas existed. Her eyes went cold as January wind. Compliance is not negotiable. That night at the county courthouse, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps while I dug through dusty files. The metallic taste of determination filled my mouth as I discovered Vivian's dirty little secret. Her precious 1987 covenant? Missing 3 required signatures, legally worthless as a Confederate dollar. Better yet, I counted 19 non-earth tone properties in our subdivision, including Princess Vivian's own forest green shutters. The courthouse janitor, sweeping nearby, shook his head. Another fence fight? Something like that. But here's where it gets interesting. While researching, I noticed something odd. Vivian's husband Marcus owns First National Bank downtown, and 6 families in our neighborhood had recently received foreclosure warnings, all coincidentally after HOA violations. Sarah was folding tiny onesies when I got home, her nervous humming filling our kitchen like a lullaby. What'd you find, cowboy? That our HOA president is running a scam. She stopped folding. What kind of scam? The kind that ends with us losing our home if we don't fight back. The stakes just got real. Sarah's high-risk pregnancy meant stress could harm our baby. Our ranch was already hemorrhaging money after last year's drought. Legal fees would drain our savings faster than a busted water tank. But surrender wasn't an option. 4 generations of Thorntons had worked this land. Grandpa Joe survived the Dust Bowl, the Depression, and 3 market crashes. I wasn't about to let some city slicker lawyer steal his legacy over paint colors. I hired Buck Hartley, local attorney who wore cowboy boots to court and knew every loophole in Texas property law. We filed harassment charges and demanded proof of HOA authority. Vivian's response? $500 daily fines, retroactive, lien threats, Dallas lawyers sending papers thick enough to choke a horse. The fence was just her opening move. What came next would test everything I thought I knew about justice, community, and how far people will go for power. The certified letter arrived like a cancer diagnosis. Thornton and Associates Dallas lawyers whose marble lobby hourly rates could buy a decent pickup truck. Cease and desist all non-compliant exterior modifications. Your willful violation constitutes property value diminishment. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in civil litigation seeking damages, injunctive relief, and attorney fees. Sarah's hands shook reading it. The morning sickness had been brutal lately and stress wasn't helping. Wade, they want to sue us into bankruptcy. $500 daily fines, retroactive to the original complaint. $12,000 already on the books. The metallic taste of panic filled my mouth as I calculated our savings against legal costs. But something felt wrong about this whole setup. Grandpa Joe always said, when someone's pushing you this hard, ask yourself what they really want. So I drove to the courthouse, armed with questions and that stubborn Thornton streak. Rita Gonzalez from the county assessor's office makes coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Over bitter brew that could strip fence paint, she pulled up property records on her ancient computer. Your HOA president's been shopping, Rita said, scrolling through transactions. 6 properties in 18 months, all through different company names. The pattern hit me like cold creek water. Every property Vivian bought had received HOA violations first. The Henderson place got cited for excessive garden gnomes, sold 3 months later for $30,000 under market. The Murphy house violated for non-conforming mailbox design, foreclosed when they couldn't afford Buck's competitor. I'd read about these schemes in an old property law book Buck had loaned me years back. Create violations, pressure sales, buy low, flip high. Classic predatory investment strategy. The takeaway was simple. Document everything, because patterns prove intent in court. Rita, she's basically stealing houses. I'm just showing you public records. She winked knowingly. The real betrayal blindsided me at dinner time. Sarah came home from grocery shopping with tear-streaked cheeks and that haunted look I'd seen after her first miscarriage. Emma Morrison crossed the street to avoid me, she whispered. Wouldn't even make eye contact. Jake appeared at our door that evening, manila envelope in hand. The smell of his cologne, the same Old Spice he'd worn to every neighborhood barbecue, now seemed foreign and wrong. Wait, I'm sorry. Vivian made an offer I couldn't refuse. Inside, the original fence complaint, Jake's signature, dated 3 weeks before Vivian's first visit to our property. You started this whole thing? The words came out hollow, disbelieving. Her law firm offered Tommy an internship. Full scholarship potential if he impresses them. Jake's voice cracked like a teenage boy's. We can't afford college otherwise. 8 years of borrowed tools, shared beers, and 4th of July barbecues evaporated like morning mist. Jake, we've been neighbors, friends. I know, and it's killing me, but my boy's future matters more than fence colors. The betrayal cut deeper than any sledgehammer blow, but it also crystallized something important. This wasn't about aesthetics or property values. This was about power, money, and how far people would go to get both. Buck Hartley's office smells like leather law books and honest sweat, the kind of place where handshake deals still mean something. I dumped the evidence across his oak desk. Property records, violation timelines, shell company filings. Wade, if we can prove conspiracy, this becomes federal RICO territory, Buck said, studying the documents. But we need to go public first. Make it too big for them to bury quietly. That's when I remembered something else from those property law books. Public pressure often works faster than private litigation. The court of public opinion moves at internet speed, while legal courts crawl like wounded cattle. I started with our neighborhood Facebook group, posted the property timeline alongside a map showing violation patterns, added photos of the courthouse documents proving the covenant's invalid signatures. The response erupted overnight. 47 comments from neighbors I'd barely spoken to. We got cited for garden colors last month. They tried buying our house below market. Nobody told us about shell companies. Within 24 hours, Colorful Community gained 200 members. The story jumped to WhatsApp groups, then local news stations. Channel 7 called Tuesday. "Mr. Thornton, we'd like to interview you about the fence dispute dividing your community." By Thursday, 13 neighbors had violation notices, all for previously accepted features, all facing expensive compliance or legal action. The smell of rebellion hung thick as August humidity. Pete Wilson painted his mailbox yellow overnight. The Martinez family added purple shutters. The Morgans installed a rainbow fence that made mine look conservative. Vivian's counterattack came fast and vicious. Anonymous flyers appeared in every mailbox. "Wade Thornton is destroying our property values. His refusal to follow standards threatens every family's investment. Don't let one man's selfishness hurt your children's future." But her biggest mistake happened on Channel 7. When asked about longtime residents' complaints, she said, "Some people simply don't understand what makes a community desirable." Old Pete called that night, chuckling. "Wade, that woman just declared war on everyone who was here before her. For the first time since this started, I felt like we might actually win." Vivian's response to the media attention was swift and surgical. She organized what she called a concerned neighbors meeting at the community center, though concerned seemed to mean recently arrived and terrified of property value drops. The meeting felt like a kangaroo court. Vivian stood at a podium she'd brought from somewhere, projecting photos of my fence onto a white screen like evidence in a murder trial. Each image had red circles around the violations: my turquoise posts, orange trim, hand-carved horses. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced in her courtroom voice, "we're facing a crisis of community standards. This fence," dramatic pause, "attracts undesirable elements to our neighborhood." The coded language made my jaw clench. Sarah squeezed my hand, recognizing the dog whistle for what it was. In Vivian's world, undesirable elements meant anyone who didn't drive a Mercedes or summer in the Hamptons. 12 people attended, all newcomers, all nodding like dashboard bobbleheads as Vivian painted me as some rogue property owner threatening their children's future. But while Vivian played politician, I was playing detective. Sarah's friend Rita had connections throughout county government. 20 years of processing property transfers teaches you where the real dirt hides. Over lunch at Miguel's Cafe, where the salsa burns your tongue and the gossip flows like beer, Rita dropped a bombshell that made everything click into place. "Your HOA queen owns 6 properties through shell companies," Rita said, sliding photocopied documents across the sticky table. "But here's the interesting part. Her husband Marcus approves the mortgages for all the preferred buyers who replace the families they force out. The scam was beautiful in its simplicity. Create violations, pressure sales. Marcus's bank finances the new buyers at favorable rates. Vivian's companies flip the properties for massive profits. Rinse and repeat until you own the entire neighborhood." I was studying the documents when my phone buzzed. Buck Hartley's voice was tight with excitement. "Wade, you need to see this. Vivian just made a huge mistake. She'd sent an official HOA inspector to my property, actually her cousin Randy from Plano, wearing a clipboard and an attitude. Sarah had been smart enough to film the entire encounter through our kitchen window. The video was comedy gold. Randy strutting around our property like he owned it, photographing everything from our cattle operation to our well locations. When he demanded access to inspect our barn for code violations, I'd asked for his credentials. "I don't need credentials. I'm conducting an official HOA inspection." "Of what? The barn predates your subdivision by 40 years. Community standards apply to all structures, sir." The beautiful part was watching him fumble when I asked which specific codes he was inspecting for. Turns out Randy sold insurance in Plano and couldn't tell building code from dress code. But the video revealed something more disturbing. Randy was photographing our water rights markers, asking detailed questions about our irrigation system, and measuring distances from our well to property lines. That's not aesthetic compliance, that's development reconnaissance. I posted the video on Colorful Community that evening. By midnight, it had 800 views and 43 comments ranging from laughter to outrage. The local news picked it up the next morning, turning Vivian's inspector into a community joke. Her response was predictably nuclear. By Thursday, code enforcement had citations for every brightly colored fence in the neighborhood, not HOA violations, actual county citations for non-permitted exterior modifications. The Martinez family got hit for their purple shutters. The Morgans faced fines for their rainbow garden fence. Old Pete Wilson discovered his yellow mailbox violated municipal aesthetic ordinances that nobody had enforced in 20 years. She's using government power to enforce her private agenda, Buck explained during our Friday morning strategy session. That's corruption of public office if we can prove coordination. The proof came from an unexpected source. Tommy Morrison, Jake's son, the one whose college dreams had turned his father into Vivian's puppet, appeared at my door Saturday evening, looking like he'd been wrestling his conscience and losing. "Mr. Thornton, I need to tell you something." His voice cracked with teenage guilt. "My dad doesn't know I'm here." Tommy had been working part-time at Vivian's law firm, filing papers and fetching coffee. He'd overheard phone calls between Vivian and someone at the county planning office calls about expediting citations and prioritizing aesthetic violations in our subdivision. "She's got someone inside county government," Tommy whispered, glancing around like spies might be lurking behind our porch swing. "They coordinate every Friday at lunch." The kid handed me a manila envelope. "I'm sorry about my dad. This whole thing is wrong." Inside were copies of text messages between Vivian and County Code Enforcement Supervisor Dennis Walsh. The messages were damning. Target the colorful properties first. Maximum fines, minimum notice. Make compliance impossible. Sarah made Tommy hot chocolate while I studied the evidence. The sweet smell of cocoa couldn't mask the bitter taste of corruption, but it reminded me why we were fighting. Communities should protect their young people, not sacrifice them to adult ambitions. The war was escalating, but we finally had ammunition that could end it. 3 a.m. The sound of splintering wood that started this whole nightmare. But this time, I was ready. Security cameras I'd installed the week before captured everything in high-definition clarity. 3 figures with sledgehammers, systematically destroying what we'd rebuilt of the fence. Vivian herself wielding a crowbar like some deranged suburban Viking, her white Mercedes idling nearby with the engine running. But the sledgehammers were just the opening act. I woke up Tuesday morning to find my cattle gate hanging open, chain cut clean through with bolt cutters. 6 steers wandering Highway 287 like confused tourists. Thank God for early rising truckers who called it in before someone got killed. It took 3 hours and half the volunteer fire department to round up those cattle. The smell of diesel exhaust and animal fear hung thick in the morning air as we herded them back through traffic that stretched for miles. Sheriff Martinez arrived as we closed the last gate. "Wade, this is getting dangerous. Livestock on a highway could have killed someone." "Jim, look at these cut marks. This wasn't an accident." He studied the chain, whistling low. "Professional bolt cutters, clean cut, no ragged edges." The metallic taste of rage filled my mouth as he photographed the evidence. "I'll dust for prints, but whoever did this knew what they were doing." Wednesday brought irrigation line sabotage. Someone had punctured our main water line in 12 places, small holes that took hours to find but cost hundreds in wasted water. Our east pasture flooded while the west side went bone dry. The taste of muddy water from checking broken sprinkler heads reminded me of childhood floods, when Grandpa Joe taught me that water was life itself on a ranch. Destroying someone's irrigation wasn't just vandalism, it was trying to kill their livelihood. Thursday morning, I found eyesore spray painted across our barn in letters 3 feet tall. Bright red paint dripping down weathered wood like blood from an open wound. That's when Sarah broke down crying. Not the gentle tears of pregnancy hormones, but gut-wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. "I can't take this anymore," she whispered, clinging to me in our kitchen while coffee grew cold on the counter. "What if they hurt our baby? What if they hurt you?" But Friday's attack crossed every line imaginable. I came out of Miguel's cafe after lunch to find all 4 tires on my truck slashed. Not just punctured, methodically shredded with what looked like a utility knife. The acrid smell of rubber and betrayal filled the parking lot air. Miguel himself stood beside me, shaking his head. 30 years I've had this cafe, Wade. Never seen anything like this. That woman's lost her mind." That's when everything clicked. While documenting damage for insurance claims, I'd been researching property records to understand Vivian's game plan. Buck had taught me that knowing your enemy's strategy beats reactive defense every time. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Florence Meadows, 83 years old and sharp as barbed wire. Her father had developed our subdivision back in 1985, and she still managed the family trust that owned most of the infrastructure. That Blackwood woman tried to buy our road 6 months ago, Florence told me over sweet tea in her parlor that smelled of lavender and old money. Offered $200,000 for Meadowbrook Lane. When I refused, she got very unpleasant. Meadowbrook Lane, the single private road providing access to all 23 homes in our subdivision. I'd driven it 1,000 times without thinking about ownership, but property law books from my research had taught me something crucial. Private roads are private property, subject to owner control. Florence, who actually owns the road now? The Meadows Family Trust. That's me, essentially. She sipped her tea delicately. Though I'm getting too old to handle the maintenance. County won't take it over without major improvements. They're talking $200,000 in repairs. My pulse quickened as pieces fell into place. Vivian needed that road for her development plans. No road access meant no luxury homes, no massive profits, no suburban empire. What would it take to sell the road? Right buyer with cash? $150,000. I need to settle this before winter. My health isn't what it used to be. That night I sat in Grandpa Joe's old leather chair, calculator in hand, and a wild idea forming like storm clouds on a summer horizon. The inheritance from selling his antique tractor collection last year sat in our savings account, $147,000, earmarked for the baby's college fund. But sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything. Sarah found me there at midnight, studying property law websites and road maintenance contracts. Wade, honey, what are you planning? Something that'll either end this war or get us both arrested. The rough texture of the chair's cracked leather beneath my palms felt like Grandpa's weathered hands, and I could almost hear his voice. Sometimes, boy, the best defense is a damn good offense. By sunrise, I had a plan that would either save our community or destroy us completely. 2 a.m. research sessions reveal more than courthouse documents. They expose the soul of a scheme. While Sarah slept upstairs, exhausted from another day of pregnancy complications, I hunched over my laptop in the kitchen, following digital breadcrumbs through public real estate filings. The blue screen glow painted shadows across legal documents spread like battle plans across our dining table. That's when I found it. The smoking gun hidden in plain sight. Vivian hadn't just been buying random properties through shell companies. She'd been assembling pieces of a massive development puzzle, filing preliminary plans with the county under the name Blackwood Estates. Luxury homes starting at $800,000, golf course, country club, spa resort, the crown jewel of her empire, my 40-acre ranch, designated as the grand entrance and welcome center for the entire development. My blood ran cold reading the architectural renderings. Where our century-old oak trees stood, she'd planned a marble fountain. Where Grandpa Joe's barn housed 3 generations of memories, she envisioned valet parking for country club members. But here's what made my hands shake with rage: the financial projections. $2.3 million in development profits, $600,000 just from my property, once she forced us into foreclosure through legal fees and harassment. The timeline was surgical in its precision. Over 18 months, she'd systematically targeted every property owner who might resist her vision. The Hendersons with their garden gnomes bought out. The Murphys with their non-conforming mailbox foreclosed. 8 families forced from their homes so far, each replaced by carefully selected buyers who'd approve her development plans. Marcus's bank held mortgages on 11 properties now. Every foreclosure went to pre-approved buyers at below-market rates. Every new neighbor voted exactly as Vivian directed in HOA meetings. She needed 80% property control to dissolve the HOA and rezone for commercial development. My ranch represented the final piece, the biggest obstacle to her suburban empire. The fence violations were never about aesthetics. They were about creating legal justification for what amounted to legalized theft. But then I found the weakness in her perfect plan. Buried in the development filings was a critical dependency. Project viability contingent upon securing primary access via Meadowbrook Lane or suitable alternative. Every rendering showed the main entrance flowing through our neighborhood's only road. I pulled up county maps tracing every possible route to the development site. Meadowbrook Lane was it. No alternatives existed unless she wanted to build 3 miles of new road through protected wetlands, an environmental nightmare that would cost millions and take years to permit. Control the road, control the entire development. My fingers trembled as I researched private road ownership laws. The legal principles were surprisingly simple. Private roads belong to their owners, who can restrict access, set usage terms, even close roads for maintenance indefinitely. Florence Meadows held the key to Vivian's empire, and she didn't even know it. At 3 a.m., with coffee growing cold and determination burning hot, I calculated our chances. $150,000 for the road, $147,000 in our savings. Close enough to make this work if Florence would negotiate. Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, wrapped in Grandpa Joe's old quilt. "Honey, you've been down here for hours. What did you find?" I turned the laptop screen toward her, showing Vivian's development plans with our ranch highlighted in red. "She's not trying to improve the neighborhood, sweetheart. She's trying to steal it." Sarah studied the renderings, her face pale in the screen's glow. "Our home becomes a parking lot? Not if I can help it." She sat beside me, her hand finding mine across the scattered documents. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time to give Queen Vivian a taste of her own medicine." The plan crystallized as I spoke. She wants to control our community through property manipulation. Let's see how she likes being on the receiving end. The stakes had just shifted from defense to offense, from victim to victor. Time to buy ourselves a road. Sunday morning found me knocking on Buck Hartley's door at dawn, coffee and donuts in hand. The smell of fresh-baked glazed mixed with his wife's garden roses as he opened the door in his robe, looking like I'd lost my mind. "Wade, it's 6 a.m. This better be good." "Buck, how would you like to turn the tables on our HOA problem?" His kitchen table became our war room. Legal pads, property maps, and Rita's photocopied documents spread across checkered tablecloth like battle plans. Buck's wife, Martha, kept our coffee cups full while we worked through the logistics. "Private road ownership," Buck mused, studying Florence's property deed. "It's aggressive but completely legal. The question is, can you afford it?" $150,000. Our entire nest egg, plus we'd need to borrow $3,000 for closing costs. Sarah's inheritance from her grandmother would cover that. Barely. "What about maintenance obligations?" I asked. Buck pulled out his reading glasses, scanning the fine print. "Current owner is responsible for all repairs and liability insurance. That's probably why Florence wants out the road needs major work." That's where Tommy Morgan came in. I'd known Tommy since high school, back when he was rebuilding engines in his daddy's garage. Now he ran the biggest construction outfit in 3 counties, with enough heavy equipment to rebuild half of Texas. His shop smelled of diesel fuel and honest sweat when I found him Monday morning, elbow deep in a bulldozer engine. The metallic ping of wrenches on steel provided soundtrack as I explained the situation. "So you want to buy a road to stick it to your HOA?" Tommy grinned, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "Wade, that's either genius or insane." "Probably both, but I need to know what we're looking at for repairs." Tommy's inspection Tuesday afternoon revealed the road's true condition. 347 potholes, 12 damaged culverts, 3 sections where the shoulder had collapsed completely. The rough asphalt crumbled under his boots like stale cornbread. "Honestly, Wade, this road should have been condemned years ago," Tommy said, making notes on his clipboard. "County's been ignoring it because it's private property. But you shut this down for emergency repairs, and nobody can argue." That's when the strategy crystallized. I wouldn't just buy the road. I'd legitimately close it for safety improvements. Give Vivian a taste of her own obstruction medicine. Rita's connections proved invaluable for navigating the bureaucracy. Over lunch at Miguel's Cafe, she explained the permit process while we dodged flying jalapenos from the kitchen. "You'll need LLC formation, business license, liability insurance, and county approval for roadwork," she said, ticking items off on tortilla-stained fingers. "But here's the beautiful part. Emergency safety closures get fast-tracked. You can shut down a dangerous road with 72 hours notice." Buck handled the legal structure. Meadowbrook Road Services LLC would purchase and maintain the road as a private business. All completely above board, all perfectly legal. Wednesday afternoon brought the scariest conversation of my life. Florence Meadows sat in her parlor, surrounded by 50 years of family photos and the lingering scent of her late husband's pipe tobacco. "Young man, you want to buy a road to spite your neighbors?" "No, ma'am. I want to buy a road to save my neighbors from someone who's been stealing their homes." I showed her the evidence. Vivian's development plans, the property manipulation scheme, the families forced from their homes. Florence's weathered hands shook as she studied the documents. "That woman told me this neighborhood needed upgrading." I thought she meant fresh paint and better landscaping. She meant replacing everyone who was here before her. Florence's eyes hardened like creek stones. My father built this community for working families, teachers, mechanics, small business owners, people with calluses on their hands and pride in their hearts. Yes, ma'am, people like my grandfather. She was quiet for a long moment, studying a family photo from the 1960s. The road is yours for $148,000, and I hope you give that woman exactly what she deserves. Thursday brought final preparations. Title company paperwork, insurance policies, business bank accounts. The familiar taste of stress and anticipation filled my mouth as we signed document after document. Sarah held my hand during the final contract signing, her grip tight enough to leave marks. Are we really doing this? We're really doing this. Tommy's crew positioned equipment Thursday night. Emergency road repair signs, orange cones, a portable office trailer that looked official enough to fool anyone. Friday at 5 p.m., Florence Meadows transferred ownership of Meadowbrook Lane to my newly formed company. The notary's stamp echoed like a gunshot in the title office's quiet air. I now owned the only road leading to Vivian's house, and to her entire development dreams. The taste of victory was sweeter than Sarah's homemade apple pie, but with a bitter edge, because I knew that come Monday morning, the real war would begin. Monday morning, 6 a.m. I positioned the first road-closed emergency repairs sign at the entrance to Meadowbrook Lane. The metallic clang of the post driver echoed through morning air that smelled of dew and diesel fuel from Tommy's equipment. By 6:30, 3 neighbors stood at the barrier, coffee cups steaming in the cool air, faces ranging from confused to amused. Old Pete Wilson arrived first, chuckling as he read the official-looking signs. "Wade, you magnificent bastard. You actually did it." The Martinez family walked up next, Maria carrying her infant son, while her husband Carlos studied the construction equipment with professional interest. "How long will repairs take?" "As long as they need to take," I replied, hammering in another post. "Safety first." But the real fireworks started at 7:15, when Vivian's white Mercedes came screaming down the lane like a bat out of hell, only to slam on brakes at my orange barrier. Through her windshield, I could see her face cycling through confusion, realization, and pure rage in about 3 seconds. She stepped out wearing a business suit in fury, her heels clicking on asphalt like gunshots. "What is this?" "Road repairs, ma'am." "For safety reasons." "You can't close a public road." I handed her a manila folder containing the property deed, purchase documents, and county permits. "Actually, I can. It's my road now." The color drained from her face as she read. Her hands trembled, whether from rage or panic I couldn't tell. Probably both. "This is illegal! You're holding the neighborhood hostage." "No, ma'am, I'm ensuring proper maintenance of private infrastructure. The alternative route adds about 8 miles, but it's perfectly safe." That's when she made her first mistake. Instead of staying calm and consulting lawyers, she started screaming. Right there in front of 6 neighbors and Tommy's construction crew, she lost her composure completely. "You pathetic rednecks! You think this changes anything? I'll destroy you. I'll take everything you have." The words echoed off the surrounding houses like gunshots. Mrs. Morgan started filming with her phone. Carlos nodded approvingly. Old Pete just smiled and sipped his coffee. By noon, Vivian had made 4 frantic phone calls that I could hear through her open car windows. Her husband Marcus, her Dallas lawyers, someone at the county planning office, someone who made her voice go shrill with desperation. But here's what she didn't know. Rita had been monitoring all county communications about our road closure. Every call Vivian made, every favor she tried to call in, every string she attempted to pull. Rita heard about it within hours. "She's panicking," Rita reported over lunch. "Called Commissioner Walsh 3 times demanding emergency intervention, but all your permits are perfect, and the road genuinely needs work." Tuesday brought Vivian's legal assault. A process server appeared at our door with an emergency injunction request, seeking to force the road's immediate reopening. The papers accused me of bad faith, restraint of trade, and conspiracy to damage property values. Buck reviewed the filing while we sat in his office, the familiar smell of leather law books surrounding us like armor. She's throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. But Wade, her biggest mistake is the timeline pressure this reveals. What do you mean? Look at these demands for immediate relief. No mention of waiting for proper legal procedures. She needs this road open now, not in 6 months. Buck tapped the papers with his pen. This suggests external pressure, probably investor deadlines or loan obligations. That afternoon brought the private investigator, a nervous little man in a cheap suit, lurking around our property with a camera that cost more than most people's cars. Sarah spotted him first, photographing our barn from the roadside ditch. "Excuse me," I called out. "Can I help you?" He startled like a spooked rabbit. "Just, documenting road conditions for insurance purposes." "Whose insurance?" "I'm not at liberty to say." I walked closer, letting my 6-foot frame cast a shadow over his 5-foot nervousness. "Well, you're on my property now, taking pictures of my buildings." "I'm at liberty to call the sheriff." He scurried away like a roach when the lights come on. But Wednesday brought the real revelation. Tommy Morrison, Jake's son, appeared at our door again, this time carrying a manila envelope that shook in his hands. "Mr. Thornton, I overheard something at the law firm. Mrs. Blackwood was screaming at her husband about loan payments and investor meetings. Inside the envelope, photocopied bank statements showing massive loans secured against Vivian's development project. Payment due dates circled in red. Default penalties that would bankrupt her if the project fell through. She owes $2.3 million to some Houston investors," Tommy whispered. "Payments due October 15th, if she can't show progress on the development by then." October 15th was 3 weeks away. Suddenly, Vivian's desperation made perfect sense. This wasn't just about pride or power anymore. This was about financial survival. And I controlled the one thing she needed most. Thursday morning brought Vivian's nuclear option, a crisis management firm from Houston with more spin than a tornado and twice as much damage potential. By 7 a.m., professionally printed flyers appeared in every mailbox within a 5-mile radius. "Veteran with explosives training holds neighborhood hostage," screamed the headline, complete with my military photo and a twisted version of my demolitions experience from Iraq. Sarah found one taped to our front door, her face pale as morning mist. "Wade, they're making you sound like a terrorist." The flyer's text was pure poison. "Wade Thornton's unstable behavior escalates daily. His military training in explosives, combined with obvious mental health issues, poses a clear danger to our families. How long before his road repairs become something more sinister?" My phone started ringing at 7:30. Channel 7 News. The county sheriff. 3 different federal agencies asking routine questions about my background and current activities. But Vivian's smear campaign backfired spectacularly when she made one crucial error. She underestimated the intelligence of our community. Old Pete Wilson called the news station himself. "You want a story about Wade Thornton? That boy pulled my grandson out of Willow Creek when the kid fell through ice 3 winters ago. That's your terrorist." Maria Martinez posted on Facebook, "Wade helped us rebuild after the tornado last year. Worked 16-hour days for free. If he's dangerous, then danger means helping your neighbors." By Thursday afternoon, the Free Our Neighborhood social media campaign had generated exactly 12 supporters, all recent arrivals who'd never actually met me. Meanwhile, the counter-narrative exploded. Wade Thornton hero stories became a Facebook phenomenon, with neighbors sharing years of kindness that Vivian's crisis team couldn't erase with all the spin in Texas. But Friday brought the real desperation play. Marcus arrived at Miguel's cafe while I was having lunch, sliding into the booth across from me like we were old friends instead of enemies. The smell of his expensive cologne clashed with Miguel's authentic Mexican spices. "Wade, let's be reasonable men here." He placed a manila envelope on the table between my enchiladas and his nervous smile. 300,000 cash. Today. No questions asked. I took another bite, chewing slowly while studying his face. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His hands shook slightly as he pushed the envelope closer. "That's a generous offer, Marcus." "Why so much?" "Because this whole thing has gotten out of hand. Vivian's stressed. The neighborhood's divided. Let's just end it peacefully. Here's what I'd learned from those property law books. When someone offers you way more than something's worth, they're usually desperate for reasons they won't explain, and desperate people make mistakes." "What's the real timeline pressure?" I asked casually. His face went white as courthouse marble. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. October 15th, ring any bells?" The blood drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint right there in the booth. "How did you—" Marcus, you'd be amazed what public records reveal when you know where to look. I pulled out my own envelope, containing copies of the loan documents Tommy had provided. 2.3 million due in 3 weeks. Default means bankruptcy. Bankruptcy means losing everything. He stared at the papers like they might bite him. Wade, you don't understand. These aren't local investors. These are Houston people. Serious people. If this development fails, then maybe you shouldn't have bet the farm on stealing other people's homes. That's when he made his final mistake. Look, we can work together here. You want to keep your ranch? Fine. We'll redesign around it. Make you the centerpiece. Rustic charm. You'll be the neighborhood mascot. The condescension dripped off him like honey from a broken jar. Mascot. Like I was some quaint decoration for their luxury development. Marcus, I think we're done here. Wait! 400,000. Cash today? Miguel appeared at our table, coffee pot in hand and fire in his eyes. Senor, I think you need to leave. Wade's eating. As Marcus stumbled toward the door, he turned back with desperation written across his face like neon. Wade, you're making a terrible mistake. These investors, they don't lose money quietly. That sounds like a threat, Marcus. It's a warning. That evening, Tommy Morgan called with disturbing news. Someone had been asking questions around town about our road closure. Not reporters or county officials, strangers with Houston accents and expensive suits, paying cash for information about my schedule, my family, our security arrangements. Sarah found me that night in Grandpa Joe's chair, checking and rechecking the locks on our doors. Honey, maybe we should consider Marcus's offer. Sweetheart, if we give in now, they'll know they can intimidate anyone who stands up to them. This isn't just about us anymore. The rough texture of the chair's cracked leather reminded me of Grandpa's weathered hands, and I could almost hear his voice. Sometimes, boy, doing right means standing firm when everyone else wants to run. 3 weeks until October 15th. 3 weeks until Vivian's empire crumbled, or our lives changed forever. The endgame was coming, and only one side would survive it. Thursday night, October 12th. The community center had never seen anything like it. 400 people crammed into a space designed for 200, folding chairs borrowed from 3 different churches, standing room only along the walls, the air thick with tension, body heat, and the competing scents of coffee and nervous sweat. 3 local TV crews set up cameras while reporters interviewed anyone willing to talk. The county commissioners sat at a folding table that looked inadequate for the circus surrounding them. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Buck beside me, our evidence boxes stacked like ammunition. Across the aisle, Vivian commanded a mahogany table her Dallas lawyers had somehow transported here, complete with professional presentation equipment and enough legal firepower to invade a small country. Sarah squeezed my hand from the front row, her pregnancy now obvious to everyone. Behind her sat our supporters, Pete Wilson, the Martinez family, the Morgans, and dozens of neighbors who'd lived here longer than Vivian had owned designer shoes. Behind Vivian's table sat the newcomers, 12 people looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Commissioner Bradley called for order, his gavel echoing like gunshots off the cinder block walls. We're here to resolve the Meadowbrook Lane access dispute. Miss Blackwood, you have 30 minutes. Vivian stood like she was addressing the Supreme Court, her voice carrying that courtroom authority that had probably intimidated dozens of defendants. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a crisis. One man's personal vendetta threatens our entire community's future. Her PowerPoint presentation was slick as oil and twice as toxic. Property value charts showing neighborhood decline. Traffic studies proving the road closure endangered emergency response. Financial projections painting my actions as economic terrorism. Wade Thornton has weaponized property ownership for revenge, she declared, clicking to a slide showing my military photo. His unstable behavior escalates daily. How long before his anger issues endanger our children? The crowd murmured. A few newcomers nodded. I felt the familiar metallic taste of adrenaline as she painted me as some deranged veteran holding the neighborhood hostage. Then came her surprise witness. I called Jake Morrison to testify about Mr. Thornton's premeditated harassment campaign. Jake walked to the front like a man heading to his own execution, avoiding my eyes completely. His voice shook as Vivian's lawyer led him through obviously rehearsed testimony. Wade confided his plan to destroy the neighborhood months ago, Jake said, the lies falling from his lips like dead leaves. He bragged about making everyone pay for crossing him. Did Mr. Thornton specifically threaten violence? He said he'd learned things in the military that could make people's lives very difficult. The crowd stirred. A few supporters looked concerned. Sarah's hand found mine, squeezing tight enough to leave marks. Buck stood calmly, legal pad in hand. Mr. Morrison, you're under oath. Are you prepared to swear these statements are true? Jake's face went pale as courthouse marble. Yes. Good. Buck walked to our evidence table, pulling out a manila folder. Then perhaps you can explain this. The first recording filled the room through portable speakers Buck had brought. Marcus's voice, clear as Sunday morning. 300,000 cash. These aren't local investors, Wade. These are Houston people. Serious people. The crowd erupted. Vivian jumped up, shouting objections. Commissioner Bradley hammered his gavel for order, but Buck wasn't finished. The second recording was even more damaging. Vivian and Marcus in their car outside the community center, caught on our security system an hour earlier. Did you coach Morrison properly? Vivian's voice, sharp with anxiety. He knows the script. Just stick to it. If this fails, Marcus, we lose everything. The investors won't accept excuses. The room went dead silent except for the audio crackling through speakers. 2.3 million due in 3 days. If Thornton doesn't cave, we're finished. Jake broke down completely, sobbing like a child caught stealing. I'm sorry. She promised Tommy's scholarship. We needed the money. But Vivian's meltdown was the real showstopper. She leapt up, screaming at Jake like a woman possessed. You were supposed to stick to the script, you idiot. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her lawyer tried desperately to restrain her, but 18 months of careful planning exploded in 30 seconds of pure rage. None of you understand what this neighborhood could become, she shrieked, pointing at the crowd. I spent 2 years setting this up perfectly, buying every property, getting rid of people who didn't belong. The confession poured out like water from a broken dam, the fence destruction, the harassment campaign, the shell companies, the coordinated foreclosures. His ridiculous ranch was ruining everything. People like him don't belong in upscale communities. The racial and class-based venom in her voice silenced the room completely. Even her supporters looked horrified. Sheriff Martinez stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Ma'am, you're under arrest for destruction of property, conspiracy, and making terroristic threats. As they led her away in restraints, she screamed one final threat. This isn't over, Thornton. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah kissed me through tears of relief. Old Pete Wilson shouted, That's how we handle bullies in Texas. Commissioner Bradley's ruling was swift and unanimous. Road reopened immediately. HOA dissolved due to fraudulent leadership. Criminal referrals filed. We'd won. But more importantly, our community had won. 6 months later, you'd think our neighborhood had undergone a magical transformation. The road closed signs were gone, replaced by a hand-carved welcome sign reading Meadowbrook Community, where neighbors matter. Maria Martinez painted it in colors that would have made Vivian faint, turquoise, orange, purple, and sunshine yellow that sparkled like joy in the Texas sun. Vivian herself was serving 18 months in federal prison, her meltdown viewed over 5 million times on YouTube. She'd become the poster child for HOA abuse, spawning legislative reforms in 12 states. Justice tastes sweeter than Sarah's apple pie, and that's saying something. Marcus faced his own reckoning federal charges for discriminatory lending that would end his banking career permanently. Their luxury development dreams died with their reputations, the land purchased by a conservation group that turned it into a wildlife preserve where children now learn about nature instead of greed. But here's the beautiful part. I gave the road back to the community. Within 2 weeks of our victory, I transferred ownership to the Meadowbrook Community Trust. Every resident owns equal shares. Democratic decisions, transparent finances. No single person can ever hold our neighborhood hostage again. The road itself gleams like new money, repaired with Vivian's restitution fund. Tommy Morgan's crew performed miracles, transforming pothole desperation into smooth asphalt that welcomes families home instead of intimidating them into submission. My fence stands prouder than ever, but now it has company. Rainbow mailboxes, purple shutters, yellow posts visible from orbit, and Pete Wilson couldn't beam brighter if he tried. We'd accidentally started a revolution, one paintbrush at a time. Fence Day became our annual celebration. Neighbors painting, children laughing, barbecue smoke mixing with the sweet scent of possibility. The tradition spread to 8 communities fighting their own HOA battles. Sometimes the smallest victories create the biggest waves. Emma Rose Thornton took her first steps in our front yard last spring, chasing butterflies past those turquoise posts that had started everything. Sarah cried watching our daughter toddle toward the fence that nearly broke us but ultimately saved us all. The ripple effects still amaze me. Buck Hartley's practice exploded with HOA cases from coast to coast. 63 families have contacted us seeking help against property manipulation schemes. We'd become accidental experts in fighting suburban tyranny. Tommy Morrison graduated valedictorian, earning legitimate scholarships through merit instead of manipulation. He visits regularly, teaching Emma to count using those painted fence posts. 1 orange, 2 orange, 3 orange. Some relationships heal stronger than before. The most powerful transformation came from Jake Morrison. After months of shame and isolation, he appeared at our door with genuine remorse and calloused hands ready to rebuild trust. Wade, I know words are worthless, but let me show you through actions. He organized neighborhood improvement projects, painted houses for elderly residents, fixed leaky roofs without payment. Slowly, authentically, he earned back our respect. Jake, redemption isn't about perfect choices, it's about what you do after imperfect ones. We shook hands that evening, and our community became whole again. The Thornton Foundation launched using speaking fees from conferences about property rights and community organizing. We've funded legal defense for 28 families fighting development scams, with a perfect victory record that makes me proud as any ranch accomplishment. Sarah manages our HOA abuse hotline, her intuition for spotting predatory patterns sharper than her grandmother's kitchen knives. She's prevented 12 communities from falling victim to Vivian-style schemes. Last Tuesday brought another call. Mr. Thornton, we're in Montana. Our HOA is trying to force us off mineral rights that have been in our family for 4 generations. Sarah laughed as I grabbed my notepad, Emma giggling from her high chair. Daddy's got another rescue mission. But that's what real communities do. We protect each other. We stand together against bullies who mistake money for character. Emma will grow up in a neighborhood where differences are celebrated, not criminalized. Where neighbors help neighbors. Where colorful fences represent freedom instead of violations. So drop your wildest HOA nightmare in the comments below. I personally read every single story, and yours might be featured on HOA Stories next. If this tale of justice fired you up, smash that subscribe button on HOA Stories because we've got dozens more David versus Goliath victories coming your way. Tell me where you're watching from tonight, city and state. Remember, bullies count on your silence. Don't give them that power. Sometimes the little guy wins. Sometimes communities remember their souls. Sometimes a simple fence becomes a symbol of freedom that changes everything.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.